That's all it took to turn victory into bloodshed. The world's greatest invasion had begun, and within the first 5 minutes, everything went wrong. Over 150,000 Allied soldiers were crossing the English Channel. Their mission, to crush Nazi Germany's grip on Europe. The plan was perfect, but perfection doesn't survive the battlefield. Every movement, every second, every breath of that day was timed to the minute. But on Omaha Beach, a small 5-minute error would unleash hell. It wasn't a storm, it wasn't the enemy, it was a decision, a human mistake that changed everything. Let's go back. 2 days before D-Day, inside secret command rooms in southern England, officers pore over maps, timing charts, weather reports. General Eisenhower's words echo in the air. We'll go. The invasion is greenlit. 5,000 ships ready, 1,000 aircraft in the sky, 150,000 men waiting for one signal. And yet, no one knows that a small miscalculation is already brewing. Because the most important part of the plan depends on the clock. Every beach had a code name: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, Sword. At Omaha, the Americans would face the deadliest defenses: machine guns, artillery, concrete bunkers high on the cliffs. They planned it down to the minute. Infantry first, then tanks 5 minutes later. 5 minutes of waiting for steel and firepower to support the men on the sand. But the sea doesn't care about plans. The waves were rough, visibility low, currents strong, and amid the chaos of thousands of landing craft, someone's clock was wrong. A 5-minute gap became a death sentence. The tanks were launched too early, too far from shore. They sank, one after another, swallowed by the channel. When the first soldiers stormed the beach, they expected armor behind them, but all they found was gunfire. Bullets tore through the air, bodies fell into the surf, men hid behind steel obstacles, waiting for tanks that would never come. The plan said 5 minutes, the sea said otherwise, and those 5 minutes cost 3,000 lives. History remembers the courage, but few remember the error. In part 2, we go inside the chaos of Omaha Beach. What went wrong in those critical minutes? And how one mistake almost destroyed the entire invasion. Omaha. To most, it was just a name on a map. To those who landed there, it became hell on earth. The plan looked flawless on paper. Infantry first, thousands of men hitting the sand. Then, 5 minutes later, the armored tanks would arrive, rolling in from the sea like iron giants. That 5-minute window was everything. It meant survival. It meant momentum. It meant victory. But when the landing craft dropped their ramps, the soldiers found something no briefing had prepared them for. The tanks were gone. Sound, chaotic shouting, gunfire intensifies. They had been launched too far from shore, nearly 6,000 yards out. Waves slammed against the fragile floating screens that kept the Sherman tanks afloat. One by one, they sank into the grey water, dragging their crews to the bottom. Out of 29 tanks meant to land at Omaha, only 2 reached the beach. 2 beat low music. Now imagine being one of those men. You're standing in a landing craft, your heart pounding, bullets hitting the metal hull. The ramp drops, and suddenly the ocean explodes with machine gun fire. No armor, no cover, just you, a rifle, and the cold surf rising around your knees. This wasn't the plan. The tanks were supposed to suppress enemy fire. They were supposed to destroy the bunkers on the cliffs, but without them, the German machine guns rained death down on every wave of soldiers. 5 minutes late, and they never stood a chance. The timing had been precise until it wasn't. A delayed signal, rough seas, a commander's hesitation, whatever the reason, those 5 minutes became eternity for the men on that beach. As the first wave hit, most were cut down before they even reached the sand. Bodies floated in the tide. Medics tried to pull survivors from the surf. The sea turned red. One officer's radio message captured the horror. All units pinned down. Tanks failed to make shore. heavy casualties. We need support now, but there was no support, because 5 minutes earlier, the tanks were sinking beneath the waves. Up on the cliffs, German gunners watched the slaughter unfold. They couldn't believe what they saw. Hundreds of men with no armor, no tanks, charging into open fire. It was a massacre. The mistake wasn't just timing, it was trust. The men trusted the plan, and the plan betrayed them. Still, they didn't give up. Against all odds, small groups crawled forward, using the dead and the wreckage for cover. They clawed their way inch by inch, up a beach that should have been their grave. By 7 a.m., less than an hour after the landings began, entire companies had been wiped out. 3,000 men lost, in the time it takes to brew a pot of coffee. But the true cause of the disaster, it wasn't the sea, it wasn't the weather. It was a single human error, buried deep in the planning room, days before D-Day even began. Wars aren't lost by machines. They're lost by men, by choices, by minutes that slip away. The 5-minute mistake that doomed Omaha didn't start on the beach. It started days earlier, in a quiet room filled with cigarette smoke and stress. The planners of Operation Neptune, the naval arm of the D-Day invasion, were working on a schedule so tight a single miscalculation could unravel everything. They studied tides, moonlight, currents, weather. Every detail seemed perfect, but there was one assumption, one dangerous oversight that no one questioned. They assumed the sea would behave. In training, the amphibious tanks, the so-called DD tanks, duplex drive, had performed flawlessly. Smooth seas, calm winds. But Normandy wasn't calm. On the morning of June 6th, winds whipped at 20 miles per hour, waves reached 6 feet high, and visibility was poor. Still, the order came. Launch the tanks now. A few commanders hesitated. One in particular, Lieutenant Colonel Joe Holderman, pleaded to delay the launch. He argued the seas were too rough, that the tanks wouldn't make it. But time was running out. The schedule couldn't shift. 5 minutes early, 5 minutes late, either could throw the entire invasion off balance. So they followed the plan. They launched the tanks anyway. That's when the clock began its countdown to disaster. The first wave of tanks rolled into the channel, each one wrapped in a thin canvas skirt, inflated to keep it floating. But the moment they hit open water, the sea tore the fabric apart. One tank sank in less than 30 seconds, then another and another. Men inside fought to escape, but their hatches jammed. The channel turned into a graveyard of steel. The commander of the tank battalion watched in horror. He realized too late. They had launched too far from shore, nearly 3 miles out. It wasn't just bad weather, it was bad math. A misreading of tide charts and launch coordinates meant the tanks started too deep, too early, and too far. The planners had failed to account for cross currents and the shifting weight of the landing craft. 5 minutes on paper became 10 in the water, and in those 10 minutes, more than 24 tanks sank beneath the waves. By the time the first soldiers hit Omaha Beach, their armored support was gone. The 5-minute delay had become a wall of fire. Radio operators screamed for updates. Commanders on the ships demanded reports. No one knew what was happening beneath the waves. They only knew this: the men on the beach were dying fast. In one after-action report, a surviving officer wrote, "The tank should have been with us. Instead, we faced the guns alone." Those words haunted the commanders for years. The official record called it a timing error, but the truth was harsher. It wasn't a mistake of minutes. It was a mistake of arrogance. The planners trusted the plan more than the sea, and the sea never forgives. In the next part, we go back to the beach, to the men who faced the impossible, the survivors, the ones who fought on long after their clocks had stopped. When the ramp dropped, hell opened. The first soldiers stepped into waist-deep water, weighted down by 70 pounds of gear, rifles above their heads. They were supposed to have tank cover, but the ocean had swallowed it. No tanks, no cover, just men and bullets. Omaha Beach, 6:31 a.m. The deadliest 60 minutes of the entire war were about to begin. The German gunners, waiting in concrete bunkers high on the cliffs, opened fire with everything they had. MG-42s, the fastest machine guns in the world, spat out 200 rounds per minute. Each bullet cut through the morning fog like lightning. Men fell before they could even fire a shot. Some drowned under the weight of their packs. Others froze, trapped between the tide and the gunfire. One soldier later said, "It felt like the ocean itself was trying to kill us." The 5-minute error that sank the tanks had left these men naked before the enemy. There was no plan B, no second chance. This was supposed to be a surprise attack. But now, the Germans were wide awake. Radio messages flooded the command ships offshore. Confusion, static, desperation. No armor support, pinned down on the beach. We can't move forward. The commanders had two choices: abort the landing or push forward into the slaughter. They chose forward. Rangers, engineers, and infantry crawled through the surf, using dead bodies for cover. They blew gaps in the barbed wire with satchel charges, each explosion lighting up the fog. For every man who made it 10 feet, 5 didn't. But they kept going, crawling, fighting, dying, because turning back meant death anyway. Up on the cliffs, a German sergeant stared down in disbelief. He radioed headquarters. "They keep coming, they don't stop." At 7:30 a.m., after nearly an hour of slaughter, a handful of soldiers finally reached the base of the cliffs. Covered in mud and blood, they began to climb. Pure human will. The first man to reach the top didn't fire his rifle. He raised a small American flag. For the next 2 hours, wave after wave followed, each one smaller, each one braver. By noon, the beach that had looked like the end of everything was now the beginning of victory. But victory came at a price. Over 3,000 American lives were lost before the beach was secured. And among the survivors, many never knew why their support never came. They would learn later that it all came down to 5 minutes. But the story doesn't end on the sand, because someone had to answer for those 5 minutes, and what they discovered changed the way the world fights wars forever. The guns fell silent, the smoke cleared, Omaha Beach was taken. But the cost? 3,000 American lives lost in less than a single morning, and the question lingered: who was responsible for those 5 minutes? Investigations began immediately. Officers pored over tide charts, timing logs, ship manifests. Maps were checked. Twice. 3 times. Everyone wanted to know, how could the tanks have sunk before even reaching the shore? The answer wasn't simple. It wasn't a single mistake. It was a chain reaction of errors. A misreading of tide tables by the naval planners. Poor communication between landing craft commanders and infantry units. A decision to launch the DD tanks too far from shore. A refusal to delay, despite warnings from officers in the field. Some blamed Lieutenant Colonel Holderman, the officer who suggested a delay. But the final order came from higher up. The planners trusted the schedule more than their instincts. The plan, the same one that promised victory, was followed to the letter. It wasn't recklessness. It was obedience, a deadly kind of obedience. The 5 minutes were logged in official reports as a minor timing error. The press never mentioned it, and yet historians later confirmed those 5 minutes nearly turned Omaha into a complete disaster. Yet out of this chaos, something remarkable happened. Small units improvised, men showed courage beyond comprehension. Officers adapted under fire. Victory, bloody, costly, miraculous, was achieved because humans refused to surrender to their mistakes. But history isn't just about bravery, it's about lessons learned. And when you look at D-Day through the lens of those 5 minutes, you see something terrifying. A simple mistake, left unchecked, can change the course of history forever. In the final part, we'll reflect on the legacy of Omaha Beach, the hidden lessons of timing and planning, and how those 5 minutes echo in modern warfare today. 5 minutes, a blink of time, a heartbeat. Yet on June 6, 1944, it cost 3,000 lives. Omaha Beach was secured. The invasion succeeded, but the cost was carved into the sand, into history, into memory. The error was small, a miscalculation, a decision, an overlooked warning. But the consequences were enormous. It shows us that in war, minutes matter, seconds matter. Every decision can mean life or death. The lessons are clear. Timing is everything. A plan, no matter how perfect, can fail in the blink of an eye. Obedience without judgment can be deadly. Following orders is vital, but questioning them when lives are at stake is essential. Human courage can overcome even the deadliest mistakes. The men who survived Omaha did the impossible because they refused to give up. History is in the details. The tiniest error can echo for decades, shaping battles, shaping nations, shaping memory. The 5-minute mistake at Omaha isn't just a story of tragedy, it's a story of resilience, of bravery, of human will. It's a reminder that history isn't just made by plans, it's made by people. So next time you hear about D-Day, remember this: behind the beaches, the tanks, the guns, there was a clock. And 5 minutes on that clock changed everything. If this story of courage, sacrifice, and deadly mistakes amazed you, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because history's secrets aren't over yet. Comment below, what would you have done if those 5 minutes were in your hands? And share this video to honor the men who fought and the lessons they left behind.